I, for one, am proud to worship at the altar of Rebecca Ferguson. All hail, Rebecca Ferguson! We're not worthy, we're not worthy, we're not worthy, you goddess-like woman, you incredibly talented actress, and you incredibly gorgeous woman. Mission Impossible 5 Rogue Nation came out in 2015. It was written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie, who did Way of the Gun, Jack Reacher, and also Reacher Arounder. But I know nothing about that movie. I've only heard about it. I know absolutely nothing, and my search history will be deleted so you can't prove anything. He also did MI6, which was a sequel to this. This was a sequel to MI4. This was a sequel to MI3. And then 3 was a sequel to MI2. Do you get the point? Do you get how numbers work? Because if you don't, then I don't know how you're going to follow the plots of these movies. Because there's numbers and stunts, and Tom Cruise as Ethan, don't call me Mike Hunt, who is an MI agent. Well, he's an IMF agent, but we have to say MI agent as well because it's just funny that way, and we have to keep up with the story. The stories are sort of interconnected a little bit. I mean, there's legacy characters. I guess really at this point we could call them legacy characters. And yes, I'm continuing my rewatch, or in the sense of 4 through number 7, to prepare for number 8, the final rectomy. I don't actually think that's the name of the title, but let's just go with it. That will be the final Mission Impossible movie until Tom Cruise dies, and then they revive the IP. And if Tom Cruise continues to do bullshit stunts and crazy things and puts himself in danger, he may not make it to 70. But before that day comes, let's talk about MI5. So we have, again, Rebecca Ferguson. My goodness. Dr. Sleep, by the way, in case you don't know about her, the one that would literally suck the life out of you, and what a way to go. Having her suck the life out of you. I really hope that there is no way that anybody near Rebecca Ferguson's circle will ever watch this, but no, she is an incredibly captivating actress, and she is an 11 out of 10. She is gorgeous. She does some great stunts here. Looks great in a yellow goddamn dress. Does a lot of leg scissoring. Totally fine during this. I've seen bits and pieces of 4. I mean, I did rewatch 4. I've seen bits and pieces of this. I've seen bits and pieces of 6. I've seen bits and pieces of 7, but I never watched 4 through 7 in full, as I said. So I went into this basically just understanding that this plot was just going to be, more of the same. We were going to get agents doing crazy things. We were going to get double, triple crossy things. And we were going to get a villain that wanted to steal something for absolute power. Really, had it not been for Rebecca Ferguson in this, I don't know if I would have enjoyed this movie as much. Not just because of her captivating beauty. Again, I would absolutely just worship. I do worship at the altar of Rebecca Ferguson. But Jeremy Renner returns as Brandt. You have Benji, played by Simon Pegg. You have Luther, played by Ving Rhames. And also you have Alec Baldwin as Hunley, the secretary. Gee, the secretary that, you have to disavow any knowledge of their actions. So Alec Baldwin, well, at least he doesn't pick up a gun in this one. And Tom Hollander, who plays the British Prime Minister. So this had a $150 million budget. It had a $55.5 million opening. It made a sizable amount of money, just about $200 million in the U.S., and it made about $682.7 million worldwide. So I think a little bit less than number 4. But still very, very good. At least the budget didn't get out of control like it did for number 7. And yes, an international rogue agency organization thing is threatening the world, and IMF now is disavowed, and they must fight back against the system and clear their names. I'm going to say a few good things about this. The Opera House attack action scene I actually liked. Thought that was actually pretty creative. Kind of reminded me of Final Fantasy 3 or Final Fantasy 6 in the States. If you get that, you are a deep cut video game fan. And I did like the car chase into the little motorcycle trike race. My biggest issues with this movie, I mean, besides the writing, because Drew Pearce also did some of the writing. He did Iron Man 3, the weakest of them, and also The Fall Guy. And I didn't like The Fall Guy, really at all. But this group is called the Syndicate, and it's a very simple plot, and I will say that's actually probably where the movie suffers the most. Yes, you don't go for necessarily like Shakespearean writing, but this is where things are starting to get long in the tooth, shall we say. It's still an entertaining movie. Again, with the aforementioned chemistry between the characters and the fact that, again, Rebecca Ferguson, yes, maybe I will profess my love for Rebecca Ferguson more than I have shut up. But we get an opening scene where Tom Cruise is trying to sneak onto a plane that has a bunch of missiles that look like they have radioactive material. I did like how they parachuted the stuff out of there. That was kind of creative. And then there is this point where Ethan goes to retrieve a message on a record. Hermione Caulfield, I think is her name, or somewhere around that. She was in Sea Fever. Very pretty girl. Did actually decent in Sea Fever. I kind of actually wish that they would have leaned more into I guess maybe more of the, decent side of that story, because a lot of it just kind of seemed okay. Nevertheless, she doesn't make it very long, because it turns out the Syndicate actually has hacked all this stuff. And they hacked the message, and it's a record. And then Tom Cruise is gassed. And the Syndicate knows all about them. Solomon Lane isn't a bad name, but it's just like, of all the villains, if I were to look at like every single villain in this, and I'm not talking the secondary villains, I'm talking the main villains, Solomon Lane would be, if not the worst, at least the second worst so far. Alec Baldwin causes issues because he's tired of IMF. Brandt basically has to kind of work with him, kind of not work with him. This is where the double-crossy thing goes on. Rebecca Ferguson, besides, again, the strengths I mentioned about her, she plays somebody named Isla Faust, who basically ends up having to, or Isla, I'm going to call her Isla because I just find it funnier. Isla, it also reminds me of Isla Dawn, and I hope she's doing well. That's a wrestler, by the way, just in case you're wondering. And basically, IMF must clear their names. He sends 2 tickets to an opera play, and then Benji comes over to Vienna. No, I don't have any way to rhyme with this, so let's just go on with it. Benji, however, has to pass lie detector tests because Alec Baldwin is bound and determined to find everybody telling the truth because he believes that Hunt is causing this. Jing Shu Zhang, I think she was the lie detector woman, and Jesus, she's beautiful. So, in Fair Vienna, where we lay our opera scene, I know that's not the actual quote, work with me here. So, Benji basically has to look at this drawing that Ethan made to find out Solomon Kane and stuff like that. I did find it hilarious, though, that there's all these hideouts and all this stowed away money and all this. And what happens if somebody breaks into the place? It's fine, whatever. Thinking too much into it. Benji is finding this stuff out, but we did get a funny scene where the CIA broke into a place in Havana, Cuba, but it turns out actually that Ethan is in Paris. I don't think geography is the CIA's strong suit based on this, but anyway, good Lord, Rebecca Ferguson in that red and that yellow dress. Jesus Christ on a cracker. Great opera scene. Like the opera, playing off without a hitch while Ethan and a guy were fighting up top. There was this one guy that was beating him up earlier called the Bone Collector, or the Bone Doctor. The Bone Collector is an infinitely worse movie, by the way. But after having to run in with Rebecca Ferguson's Faust earlier, she kind of rescues him because she's working double secret, quadruple undercover, and the opera part was pretty good. They tried to kill the Austrian Prime Minister to send a message, but that didn't work until a contingency plan with a car bomb. Here's a question: What if they took another car? Gonna blow that car up too? Gonna have that car go remote? I have so many questions. So Ethan basically tries to get Benji not involved anymore. He doesn't want him to get hurt. Benji's like, damn it, I'm in on this. I'm a field agent, and I am going to help you. And he's like, okay, sure, let's do that. So Luther feels that Ethan is his friend and will not betray him, and Brandt is acting like he's going to betray him, but he's actually not. there's a character named Atlee that is the boss of Rebecca Ferguson's Faust. And the plan between Rebecca, Simon, and Tom, and I'm just going to say their actor names here because it's funnier for some reason. Their idea is to break into this massive, complex that basically the only way to break in, you have to have retinal scan, you have to have all these things, but the final scan is so good, it recognizes how people walk. And otherwise you get shocked. So you can wear a mask, you can wear all this stuff, but if you don't master the walk, Ministry of Silly Walks, whatever, then you are dead. Here's a question. What if somebody has a limp? There are questions here that I have about this. So, there was a flash drive in a thing of lipstick earlier. That was a way to find Rebecca. There was, in Casablanca, we'll always have Paris. Rebecca in that pool. Again, sorry. Gone blank. And the idea is Tom Cruise basically has to dive into this giant dune vulva-like watering hole. Somebody poisoned the watering hole. There's this security key stuff in this complicated thing where they have to change the security system. And Tom Cruise has to hold his breath for a while. Hope that he gets there before Benji gets to the walking scan thing. And this is overly complicated. And the CGI in this water thing is not very good. I mean, it's not the worst I've seen. But even for 2015, there were parts where I'm like, that could have used another edit. Fortunately, Rebecca gets wet and helps him out in the water. I run a clean show here. And after getting the file, she ends up basically betraying them because she's trying to get information to Lane to basically bring down Lane because Lane is the leader of the syndicate. But after meeting with her boss Atlee, suddenly the file has gone, been wiped clean. Well, that's convenient. I wonder what happened. Was it a dummy file? Or did somebody else do it? What happened here? So, essentially, it gets revealed. The Benji made a copy. There's this, the file, though, it's triple encrypted. You need a retinal scan, fingerprint, and voice activation from the British Prime Minister. That's going to be difficult to do because it's the British fucking Prime Minister. They've sort of forgot about Alec Baldwin's character for a while, and then him and Brandt were going to end up in London. Well, actually, Brandt was in London, but then calls Alec Baldwin over there because the idea is, okay, I have evidence to back up all this stuff, and it gets a little bit long in the tooth. It gets a little, I don't know, it gets a little messy. Here, the plot starts to follow some of the same beats, and it starts to, try to shove itself up its own ass almost. But Atlee, it turns out, actually deleted the files because it turns out they meet up with the Prime Minister. Atlee's there. And Atlee basically is talking about all this stuff. The Prime Minister says, "Oh, Atlee, you said the syndicate was just a training exercise. It wasn't actually that. You said it wasn't going to go anywhere. Why did it go somewhere, Atlee?" And then it turns out Atlee is actually Cruz. It's Ethan, don't call me Mike. Hunt. I have to pause there. Hope I don't get flagged otherwise. But Benji and Miss Faust are captured. Ilsa Faust. Rebecca. I'll just call her Rebecca because it's just better. And the idea is Benji's got a bomb. Benji is going to end up being blown up. And Ethan, in the interim, has looked over all the files of this red box thing because it turns out not that it's the red box giving out DVDs are no longer active. If you have a red box in your area, you better rent them now while you can. But it turns out this is all a bunch of money. Untraceable money. $2.4 billion. Almost a 2.4 million. Not that wouldn't carry people far, but not this. 2.4 billion to operate however they want. Question, the fuck? How did nobody know that their money was missing? But whatever. yeah, Ethan was pretending to be Attlee, and then Attlee shows up. And because the British Prime Minister confirmed all this, Attlee was the one to lead the files. He was trying to cover up the fact the syndicate exists. Then we get a chase through the streets. Rebecca Ferguson uses her legs again to just kill a guy. I'll happily go that way. I will happily go. I don't have issues. Shut up. I don't. God, again, just how perfect would that be? So, they basically get, it's Ethan and Solomon, and it looks like, okay, it's a final showdown, and suddenly Solomon starts shooting, but it's bulletproof glass. He's trapped in a box, and then gassed, like he gassed Ethan earlier. And everybody's free, and Hundley basically says, yeah, I was wrong about IMF. They're actually good. Now he's the secretary that everything must be disavowed to, and we cut to credits. Again, it's messy, but it's fun, and Rebecca Ferguson's star power and good looks help elevate it. This is where things, I think, just started really, not even go off the rail, but just started to get really ridiculous. So that being said, let me know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd again. Let me try that again. We got the Twitter, we got the Letterboxd, and we got the Blue Sky handles. You check those out. You check out my other reviews of the films. And honestly, the grade would probably be like a B to a B plus, maybe. They're entertaining movies, but they're nothing that I'm going to watch again. It's like candy at this point. So yeah, I'm John Ritlin, and I'll see you soon.